Welcome, folks, to The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. Every week, diving deep into the truth of Catholic social teaching and restoring all things in Christ.
The Uncommon Good is on the air. I'm Bo Bonner.
And I'm Dr. Bud Marr.
We are coming to you from these United States of America, here in the middle of the country, Des Moines, Iowa, convergence of two rivers, everything you really need to survive, where we both work at Mercy College of Health Sciences. I am the Senior Advisor for Mission Initiatives and Director for the Center for Human Flourishing. Bud, what are you up to at Mercy College?
I am the Associate Provost.
We have all sorts of fun activities. If by fun we mean careers, pathways to careers that will change your life and also change communities' lives. mchs.edu. We want to thank Mercy College for underwriting our show. Bud, a whole slew of exciting things happening. We have presidential candidates running around. Yep. We have spring break that just got over. We have the Center for Human Flourishing has our good buddy and all-star Charles Camosi coming to Des Moines April 6th. It's at 6 o'clock at the Pastoral Center. But the bigger deal is if you go to mchs.edu/flourish, when the event happens, we will have that live. What's some other things that I'm missing that are happening at the good old Mercy College that underwrites our show?
Well, if I could jump back to when you mentioned the presidential candidates, and, you know, doing interviews on the surface can sound kind of boring, but I got to meet a few of those folks last week, and I was actually sort of energized by it all, just hearing these candidates who I think are really interested in what we're doing at the college, but also like sharing their vision of what that will look like. So, yeah, please pray for us. I think I can give listeners like an action step over the airwaves.
Yeah, it's not asking to get any money to anyone, so prayer is good.
Yeah, please pray for our work. I think it's great to have like a Catholic college right in the heart of Des Moines, Iowa, and so like we want to be faithful to those that great gift that's been given to us.
mchs.edu to check out not only what all we're going, there's even a president search bar over there, but also just to see the array of ways that we are providing people to enter into the health sciences field, to be a part of our community. But like we said, mchs.edu/flourish for the Center of Human Flourishing. And April 6th, like we said, coming up here soon. But it is March, so therefore there is madness.
Yeah, no doubt.
We probably shouldn't mention how bad the Big Ten's doing.
The Big Ten and the SEC both flamed out, but the Big Ten looked particularly bad because the committee put in 9 teams, and one of them advanced to the Sweet 16. So I was like, man, I'm not doing that bad in my job.
That's right.
It's like the Big Ten could pull off one of 9 that could advance past the first weekend of the tournament.
Now, I have so Bud and I have been in the same tournament bracket for a long time. And
is that going this year? I submitted one.
Yeah, same
Good.
here. Yeah, so you can go and look. What I think is happening at the moment, Bud, is there's people who are in the lead because they have the most choices, but they have the least points possible.
Oh.
So it's very interesting to see, will there be a dark horse? Maybe, for instance, some kid from Oklahoma that chose Texas Tech, or will some of your longtime friends who are currently in the lead hang on for dear life in order to take the prize?
Well, my picks have always been very influenced by my fandom, my affections.
Right.
And so, like, in that competition, I'm doing horrible because I think I picked Arkansas to go to the Final Four. That didn't pan out. But in the one, I'm in a neighborhood one. I lost Kentucky, and a lot of people lost them, and I still have Arizona and Gonzaga alive. So,
well,
they're in the finals in that one.
There's there's always hoping. There's always everybody has their hopes dashed, but then we also always have the best of Cinderellas. We have to hand it to the Jesuits, right? Always figuring out how to get people into the Sweet 16 that no one thought about.
If you just picked like Catholic sympathies this go around, it wouldn't have been too bad.
Yeah,
like Villanova and St. Peter's. Creighton almost knocked off KU, so
yeah,
next year I might just go all Catholic.
They should do. Just, that's showing it up, is that like we don't have enough faith. That's right. Well, folks, speaking of faith, you want to have faith in this series that we've been having. We're going to continue it further. Sacrificial Leadership in the Catholic Key. We got into Frenchies last time, Bud. We were talking about René Girard and these big ideas of the scapegoat, but hopefully we can pay it off a little bit. In the particular, probably got some, us folks, get a little bit philosophical, but try to land the plane about how it is that on the ground, leaders who believe what the Catholic Church teaches, we think should have a bit different sort of leadership style precisely in imitating Jesus Christ in his self-emptying. So this is The Uncommon Good. We'll continue that right after this break. Stick around. We'll be back right after this.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry, including the St. Sarah Club of Des Moines and the Sarah Club of Council Bluffs. Sarah is an apostolate of the Worldwide Catholic Church dedicated to fostering and supporting priesthood and religious vocations. Sarahans strive to accomplish their mission through prayer, fellowship, and service to the bishop, priests, sisters, and all in religious formation, and in doing so to increase their own holiness. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinserra.org. Thank you, Sarahans, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences, where you can chart your course for more.
They provide unparalleled clinical rotations, hands-on learning, accelerated education, and flexible schedules, all part of the Mercy College experience.
Learn more at mchs.edu.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Skeffington's Formal Wear, in business since 1951, with locations in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Coralville, and Ankeny. Skeffington's Formal Wear, fitting you for life celebrations. Online at skeffingtons.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Dr. David Ball from Des Moines Eye Surgeons, your total eye care specialist specializing in cataracts and glaucoma care. Des Moines Eye Surgeons, 515-255-3546, dmisurgeons.com.
Iowa Catholic Radio would like to thank our business partner, Fast Signs. Learn more about their signs, digital signs, banners, and other products and services at fastsigns.com or 515-224-1210.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Confluence Brewing Company, brewed locally since 2012 and featuring regular, seasonal, and limited release beers. Confluence Brewing Company, 1235 Thomas Beck Road off the bike trail south of Grays Lake. ConfluenceBrewing.com. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Dental Associates, addressing your smile needs and dreams. 515-225-6742. Des Moines-DentalAssociates.com. Thank you, Dental Associates, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Back to The Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner, Dr. Bud Marr, joining you this Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the show. Bud, to continue on our merry way, talking about sacrificial leadership in the Catholic Church, how imitating Christ and his self-emptying nature should change how our leaders look. We have been marching down. We hope everybody's had the chance to go listen to the former episodes, but we've been marching along, really considering this idea that what it means to imitate Jesus, not only sort of theologically, but in his life and what he's done, what we know of Scripture. And we've sort of brought in friends along the way, Talib, Gerard, names that you don't have to know by heart, but have added theories that we hope make some of this more concrete. We promised last week in the show that this episode would be leading with our wounds. And so what do we mean by that? Because that can sound, I don't know, Bud, unsanitary perhaps, at least painful. But I think one more time we turn to a fact about the reality of Jesus and then try to consider what that has to say to us about leadership here on earth. So when Jesus Christ is resurrected, after he has willingly become the scapegoat, he's resurrected, and in that resurrection, of course, he shows his power over life and death, but he also demonstrates the sort of ineffectiveness of the violence and division that all those turned against him would do. He exposes the scapegoat mechanism that it indeed does not exhaust all of that sort of opprobrium and hate and evil, but that willingness to sort of suffer for others, to be set apart for others, like we said, that to be strong for the sake of the weak, as we said last show, allows for this to happen. But very interestingly, but he doesn't get resurrected and sort of just throw this all to the side. We very much see in the resurrection episodes that he's resurrected with the wounds of his crucifixion. And indeed, even at the end of time, in the Apocalypse or the Revelation of John, Christ still has his wounds. And you hear different saints talk about these as the 5 jewels of Christ's resurrected life, that he leads with his wounds even now in eternity. But I guess the idea is, whatever else we're going to say about scapegoat being willing to take on the division of a place when you lead it, this idea that Christ leads even now in heaven with his wounds is both paradoxical but miraculous, and I hope that that's what we're able to unpack today.
Yeah, this all kind of harkens back to some of what we discussed last week. So life on earth is characterized by strife and conflict. This happens in families. This happens in societies. It probably happens to some of you listening at your workplace. And the question is, when faced with that sort of reality, which inevitably comes our way, what do we do? And you mentioned leading with wounds, but we tend to think of woundedness as weakness. It's like you're not up to the task in some ways. Jesus Christ became a willing sacrifice. And then, as you mentioned, even in heaven, to this day where he's ruler of all, where he's king, he still bears those wounds in his body. What does that mean for us? Well, there are a lot of ways we could unpack this. I think immediately of the civil rights movement, and I'll draw this back to something that's like applicable to our lives today. But I bring this up because you may be saying, well, Bud doesn't understand like really how bad my workplace is, the kind of like challenges we're facing. Well, a rough state of affairs is segregation in the middle part of the 20th century. And in the face of that sort of injustice, it would be quite easy to loathe your enemies and to say, my goal is to attain victory over them and then to make them pay for what they've done. And I think there were some figures who sort of adopted that modality. What you see in someone like, I'll mention prominent ones like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., is they confronted the evildoers. They confronted those who were wronging them. They didn't resort to violence, and their goal was not simply to overcome and to punish, but they, like you said, Bo, willingly took on opprobrium or injustice. In both Rosa Parks' case and MLK's, they were imprisoned, unjustly, and it wasn't until America saw someone like Rosa Parks lining up for, what's the profile picture you take in prison?
A mugshot.
A mugshot. Like that sort of thing woke us out of the slumber that we were in. Now, translating this to your daily life is going to be kind of difficult sometimes, but you're going to have times at work where you face, we'll call them injustices, you see shortcomings in integrity, or you're just like you're facing a challenge that seems insurmountable. How do we take that kind of leading with woundedness that Christ modeled in an exemplary manner, and then others throughout history have imitated, especially the saints, of course. How do we live that sort of out in our workplace, in our family life, et cetera?
I think it's important to point out, because it sure can sound like when we say things like be a servant leader, be a sacrificial leader, lead with your wounds, or lead with woundedness, that it can sound like we're enabling. Yeah. That's one of the chief temptations is you're a doormat, you let people run over you, and then you enable them. But it's important, right, to ask, what is it that we're going to be able to do to call attention to how the way of division, the way of hatred, the way of injustice doesn't work? And to oppose injustice with injustice, to fight fire with fire in this case, truly is just to perpetuate it. We talked about that last time with this mimetic contagion, this idea that there is no end to strife and that strife is a perpetual motion machine if you let it. Now, it's also the case that if you don't speak up to it and you don't say anything to confront it, that too enables it, lets it occur. But in all of these examples, we never see someone who just let people run them over. Christ was like a lamb to the slaughter, but spoke truth to Pilate, and when was confronted by the Sanhedrin, admitted who he was. And in his resurrection, not only does he show the power of God, but by remaining with those wounds, calls out the injustices of all time in showing the suffering of his cross. When you talk about your examples, Bud, for instance, in the civil rights movement, again, this was not let the people who were the white people running segregation and treating black Americans unjustly keep on doing it. It was to allow this to happen in very public venues to show it for what it was so that people could no longer act like it doesn't happen. In many ways, sacrificial leadership, by allowing that opprobrium, that division, that hatred to fall on us, to be the scapegoat momentarily, not because the scapegoat works, but to show, to extinguish its power, is to, in fact, use the tradition, as it were, against itself. Another civil rights figure, if you go back further, Frederick Douglass, in his very famous and one of the most powerful works written in America, What to the Slave is the 4th of July, his entire point was that America has ideals about how to treat people, and it has failed them miserably in how it has treated Africans that they have taken as slaves and brought over to the United States. And it's precisely by not ignoring it or pushing it to the side or trying to quietly integrate into society. Frederick Douglass had to run for his life not only to escape slavery, but when he spoke out and told about his life as a slave, he was under constant death threat and had to leave the America in order just to be safe. But he allowed that opprobrium to come onto him so that the evil and division could be exposed. Leading with woundedness, Bud, is actually a very strong thing to do. It is not the weak-willed who do it. It is not to be ran over or a doormat. It is to quite firmly place oneself in the middle of the most contentious aspects and let those things and divisions fall on us so that their incapacity to succeed can be exposed. The unjust one will fail. That's what Psalm 1 talks about, right? Wickedness is its own failure, but it must be exposed as such. Otherwise, people will keep on with the myth that violence and hatred, division will be successful.
Yeah, another angle at this is last week we talked about these different groups that and their relationship to Christ, like the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Zealots, etc. And so you start to begin to think to like the various like responsibilities that God sends our way, and there's the temptation to be a doormat. And I think with the doormat approach, it can also be a kind of withdrawal, like either a sort of like lack of concern with what's in front of you, or some folks will say like, well, the problems are too big, I'm just going to go find something different, or we're going to abandon education altogether. The flip side of that is more like the zealot mindset, where I think for the zealot, like they see the injustices and they feel them strongly, but they sort of pin it on another person. And so that's the kind of like, so like thinking about our organizations, like if I'm able to excise this one individual, like everything will be better. But a lot of these dynamics, they take on lives of their own. And in society, like the way that St. Paul talked about this is like as principalities and powers. But sometimes even like our families or our workplaces can become like overrun by dynamics that started out as like a personal vendetta and blew up into something greater. And so like what we're saying, Bo, is like if as Catholics we're committed to something like God has called us to heal people, we want to run hospitals, or God has called us to educate others, and so we're going to run schools. Those things they're going to face obstacles at different points in their history, and the question becomes, how can we confront those head on without imitating the same sort of like, we can call them demonic, like the negative dynamics that they're perpetuating, without abandoning the vocation to which we've been called. And sometimes, I mean, frankly, that does look like defeat in the present. So J.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings, he talked about the long defeat. And what's interesting is like God has designed the world in such a way that if you give wickedness long enough of a chance, it will defeat itself. I won't get into how he like works this out in The Lord of the Rings, but like I think like at this point in American history, like sometimes we ask ourselves, can we continue to run hospitals? Can we continue to run schools? Because we're facing all these external pressures. Well, we don't have to worry about that. Like we can be creative in the moment because we know like where victory ultimately resides. And if, someone happens to shut down our school or whatnot, like God will draw up something else from the ashes. But yeah, I'm kind of jumping all over the place now.
No, I think that's actually a good way to enter into the break, precisely this idea that this is in the Lord's hands, and that's exactly how Jesus overcame the grave. This is The Uncommon Good, and we'll be back right after this.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by CTO. Your support has helped thousands of students attend our Catholic schools. CTOIowa.org. At CTO, the bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Marr Security, a Catholic-owned family business providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. PerMarrsecurity.com, 515-244-5660.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Bozen the Florist. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, weddings, whatever the message, say more with Bozen. Bozen.com, 515-244-ROSE. Bozen makes the moment mean more. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a full-service residential and commercial roofing contractor in the Des Moines area since 1988. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494. Thank you, Bell Construction, for supporting Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Catholic Charities, where exceptional service is a hallmark in caring for those with essential needs, including food pantry, professional counseling, emergency family shelter, and refugee services. CatholicCharitiesDM.org.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Five Sons Naturescapes. Five Sons Naturescapes is a Catholic veteran-owned family company providing premium outdoor landscaping. Learn more about Five Sons Naturescapes at FiveSonsNaturescapes.com. FiveSonsNaturescapes.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Ashworth Vision Clinic. Complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. 515-440-4610. AshworthVision.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Mary's Cleaning Care. Mary's Cleaning Care cleans everything from residential to commercial in Des Moines and surrounding areas. Mary'sCleaningCare.com. Thank you, Mary's Cleaning Care, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Welcome back to the Uncommon Good. Bob Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr joining you this Wednesday. Wonderful to have you with us. Bud, to try to land this fantastic show, and I don't say that because I'm part of it. I'm saying that it's always wonderful when the Holy Spirit works out some of what we know going in. We want to talk about something, and then it sort of works itself out. And one of these, by talking about leading with wounds and leading with our wounds and leading with woundedness, is precisely how you ended the last segment, talking about our willingness to fail in a way that other leaders and other aspects of the world can't, because they don't have a faithfulness like Christ's. Christ knew that the Father had enwrapped him in his love. And so to go die on the cross, Christ had the faith to know that the Father would rectify that in the resurrection. And so our ability to also lead with wounds is not only to take on the woundedness and division and sort of exhaust it and expose it in how people are treating us, but it's also to be willing to fail because of our faithfulness in ways that other places can't. And that, weirdly enough, to go back to something we've talked about before, that makes us more anti-fragile than some people that have to be resilient. They have to stick to one thing. But we die and resurrect as Catholic institutions all the time.
Yeah, I was listening to a talk recently, and the speaker pointed out that if you had witnessed the crucifixion at Calvary, when you went home to your family and friends, you would not say that you had witnessed a sacrifice. You would just witness a bloody execution of like a political radical. But Christ, through the celebration of the Last Supper, the institution of the Eucharist the night before, transformed this execution into a sacrifice that was like an expression of God's great love for us. And I think about that in relationship to all the work that we're called to do, Bo. As Catholics, as Christians, we can take risk that the world cannot, because we know we'll ultimately be judged by faithfulness and not by other criteria. So that means, for instance, with our hospitals, we can welcome people, and we have to, from all backgrounds, regardless of sort of like their financial situation. And paradoxically, to the eyes of the world, that doesn't make sense. Like fiscally, it just seems like so misguided. And yet, paradoxically, people have turned to Catholic institutions over and over in history because we were characterized by that sort of abundant self-giving that didn't make sense to the world.
I mean, I think it's important to think here in Lent, when we're recording this, that it's easy to think something like fasting is a sort of scarce resource management, but it's actually not, because what it actually is doing is saying, okay, don't get obsessed with the things that pass away, like the things of this world, because there's actually an infinite, inexhaustible resource, which is the spiritual world and the love of God. And because we know in faith the inexhaustibility of that sacrificial, self-giving, self-pouring love, we can do like Christ does. We don't have to worry as much about the world hating on us. We don't have to worry about feeling like or looking like failures, because we know with that great faithfulness that Christ exemplified, that God is working in ways that we don't even have to see clearly, which is another thing, right? That if the world sees leaders as like all-knowing or like always knowing what to do, this great freedom of leading with our wounds should set us apart, as much as that sounds risky and scary, bloody, and even painful. And I think that that is a perfect way to wrap up the show. So, thank you for listening. And this is the Uncommon Good. May Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, reign in our hearts, our family, our city, our state, our nation, solar system, galaxy, the whole kit and caboodle. This is the Uncommon Good, and we'll be back next week. But if folks want to be a part of Iowa Catholic Radio and join in our prayer life, what are the ways that they can do so?
Yeah, as you continue to journey through Lent, please join us in praying. We broadcast the Rosary at 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., the Divine Mercy Chaplet at 2:55 p.m., and you can pray the Rosary anytime, anywhere using the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
If you want to make sure to keep up with all we're doing here at Iowa Catholic Radio, that's also easy to do. You can interact with all of our social media. So Iowa Catholic Radio friends on Facebook, at IA Catholic Radio on Twitter. You can download the Iowa Catholic Radio app, listen live there as well. And you can go to iowacatholicradio.com, listen live, find out all that's going on, and also donate to keep going what's going on. Events in and around the diocese are there, too. For instance, Steve Ray is going to be in town at different moments through April. Man Up Power West Lunch, Friday, April 8th, for instance, as well. We want to also, in July 24th, we have Scott McCreary and special guest Ali Colleen for the Iowa Events Center Ballroom. But we also want to make sure, one more time, to invite you out to mchs.edu/flourish on April 6th to check what's going on with Charlie Camosi and the Center for Human Flourishing. All of that you can go check out iowacatholicradio.com or call 515-223-1150 to find out more or donate as well. Bud, may your bracket shine brightly, and hopefully your spring is sprunging in a good way as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So remember, folks, to pray for us here at Mercy College and pray for everyone in the diocese. This is The Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner, Dr. Bud Marr, and we will be back next week.
The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr is heard every week on wonderful Catholic stations like this one, and anytime on podcast. Just search for The Uncommon Good.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and The Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences. Learn more at mchs.edu.